Yo, I'm Bob. Into Marvel. Happen to be totally blind since birth. Talking about Spider-Man, the animated series. Season 1, Episode 3, The Spider Slayer. It premiered on February 4th in 1995. So this actually aired right after the pilot. It aired second in line, but from what I've seen online, fans do believe that it fits quite nicely as the third episode, right after Sting of the Scorpion. We're introduced to quite a few influential movers and shakers in 22 minutes of story. Um, Up until now, Spider Man has gone up against common variety thugs. Of course, he's faced Lizard and Scorpion, but I think he's begun to make quite a name for himself in New York, so he has attracted the attention of the Smythes, Spencer and Alistair. Spencer Smythe, he's voiced by the late great Edward Mulhare, and Alistair Smythe, he is voiced by Maxwell Caulfield. And I really do love Smythe's character. I like the relationship between the Smythes. They seem like they care about each other a lot, whereas the relationship between Norman and Harry Osborn in quite a few Spider-Man incarnations, this one being no exception. The Osborns, well, Norman is quite cold toward Harry. He's always chastising him and things like that. But I like how here, Spencer feels horrible for an explosion in a lab. He blames himself, so he's teamed up with Norman because he wants money to build Smythe a hover chair. I'm guessing Smythe has been confined to a wheelchair because of that explosion. And you've got a father who is willing to make a deal with the devil and, another devil behind the scenes that nobody knows about, sans Norman. But we'll get into that guy a bit later on in the video. We don't use his name. We are going to be using his name in a bit. So I like the Spider Seekers. As Spider-Man is swinging through the city, he's got to deal with these little... I'm not sure what they look like. I wish we could have gotten some Toy Biz toys of the Spider Seekers back in the day. We did get the Spider Slayers. And when Spencer unveiled the Black Widow, when I was watching the premiere, when it actually premiered, I really wanted the thing. There were quite a few of Smythe's robots that were very toyetic, and I think the Spider Slayers were a pretty good example. The Black Widow, and then we're introduced to the Tarantula and the Scorpion in the next episode. I really love these robots and what they could do. See, I like how Spencer was probing Spider-Man. He was kind of testing his reflexes, his speed, his agility, as you had the teaser for the episode. And then before we went to commercial break, he unveiled the Black Widow to try and appeal to Osborn. Osborn was already accusing him of failure. So speaking of the Osborns, Neil Ross, he voices Norman Osborn in this show, and Gary Imhoff voices Harry Osborn. So we're introduced to Norman and Harry in this episode. Harry's gonna go to Jameson's charity ball. He's helping Felicia Hardy's mom with this ball. They're throwing it at his house. I like how Felicia and Jameson, they're butting heads as she's in his office telling him what to do. And Jameson being Jameson, he's not having any of it. But I like that Felicia, she's not intimidated by Jameson. She's just kind of telling him like it is. And, or are you sure you know what you're doing? You are aware that we are the Hardys and, we're big muckety mucks in New York and all that. I'm of course paraphrasing what she's saying. And Jameson is about to have it out with her, and I like how Robbie has to jump in and be like, JJ, remember, Felicia's mom is a very important philanthropist and advertiser. You need to kind of keep your cool. Peter is out there in the office, and I like how Jameson is, he's forced to invite Peter to take pictures. He begrudgingly calls Peter his best photographer. I think he knows that, but Jameson is trying to come off as this rough and tough news guy. He doesn't want anybody to receive compliments. He just kind of likes putting people in their places and criticizing them nonstop. So he he feels really uncomfortable, I think, when he has to pay compliments. As he's seen here in the episode, he's like, "That's why I'm sending my best photographer, my very best." And then right after he says that, he goes right back to chastising and criticizing Peter, which is one of my favorite scenes of the episode. You got Eddie Brock, voiced by Hank Azaria. He's back in the episode. And I like how Spencer has brought him to the factory. He wants the media there just in case Norman decides to pull anything shady. He wants everything to be on the up and up. So Norman feels like he's got to be very careful. He's claiming that things are going to be done by the book. And you've got that really warm moment between Alistair and Spencer there when we find out what had happened to Smythe, to Alistair, to put him in the wheelchair there. And it's such a wonderful relationship that the two have. You've got Spencer willing to do whatever he needs to do in order to help his son. I think, Norman loves Harry as well, but he's not really sure how to show it. And so when we see the Osborns in quite a few Spider-Man incarnations, they're not really in the best father-son relationship. I think Norman is a bit, he thaws a bit toward Harry here and there in this show, though, more so than other incarnations. Ooh, he is not a nice guy in the Spectacular Spider-Man. I'd like to cover that show at some point on this channel. That's another one of my favorites. I like Spencer. He is ever the optimist, and he's like, "Oh, come on, Osborn's not that bad." And then we are introduced to the Kingpin in this episode. And this was the first time I came across this character. I had no idea he was such a heavy hitter in Daredevil. I don't think I even knew who Daredevil was when this episode premiered. Remember, this show was on TV, and there was no way I could read the comics. I think I learned about Daredevil, well, before he showed up in Spider-Man the Animated Series. One of my friends told me about him, but that might have been also when I learned that he played such a big role in the Daredevil comics, that Kingpin played such a massive role in the Daredevil books. But I love him in this show. He is behind the scenes, pulling the strings. Norman owes Fisk a lot of money. So, Norman is doing his best to pay back a loan. And if Norman doesn't deliver Spider-Man, then Fisk gets Oscorp. And I like how Norman's like, well, it occurs to me, either way, you win. Spider-Man's destroyed, or if that doesn't work out, you're going to get my company. And Fisk is like, that's why I'm the Kingpin. And he doesn't really laugh loudly and maniacally yet in the show. He's just kind of like, just has this really deep, low chuckle. And I like how cultured this guy is. He's very soft-spoken. He's a planner. He's a schemer. I like that in this incarnation, as well as others, he is publicly a philanthropist. But here he is, comfortable as a crime lord. He's got a worldwide criminal empire, and Spider-Man has jeopardized what he's trying to do in New York. So Spider-Man has caught the attention of the Kingpin in this episode. And I like, for the longest time in the show, Spider-Man has no idea that the Kingpin exists. Of course, he knows about Fisk, but he doesn't learn, spoiler alert, in case you haven't watched it, pause the video and then, go watch the whole series if you want. If not, that's fine too. But he doesn't learn who Fisk is for quite a few episodes. He doesn't learn about his true dealings, his true persona, until season 3. So it's quite a while until, he's brought into the light by a blind character. So you've got Harry showing up at the charity ball with Flash Thompson. Flash is one of my favorite characters in the show, even though he is a bit of a jerk quite a lot of the time. I think he does have a good heart, even though he takes out his frustrations on Peter. And he's mad that Felicia is being danced away from him, so he's gonna dress up like Spider-Man and attempt to scare the bejabbers out of Peter here. So Flash Thompson is voiced by Patrick Labierteau, and I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. I remember watching a video once in which John Semper said the man has a name that's almost impossible to pronounce. So I try to look up as many pronunciations as I can. But I love how Flash's little stunt backfires, and he's like, those pictures of me you're taking, I don't like them. And Peter's like, okay, well, what do you want me to say? And Flash is like, yeah, ah! Of course, Peter being Peter, he's like, Flash, he sees the Spider Slayer there coming up, and Peter's like, okay, and he copies him. He's like, ah! It's one of my favorite bits of the episode. That's the thing about Spidey. Whenever he is in a life-threatening situation, he uses humor to, I think, diffuse it as well as make himself feel a little better. So you've got this massive spider robot demolishing everything. I like how Felicia, she goes up to it and she's yelling at it and then tries to go after her. It's there's a lot of danger going on, but at the same time, I like how Felicia, she's kind of in her own little bubble. She thinks if she, yells at the infiltrator, the giant robot, it's going to immediately do what she tells it to do. I would think Jameson would probably do the same thing, though. These folks come from a background in which they've got a heck of a lot of money. And if you raise your voice and yell at the problem, it'll magically go away, but then it starts to attack her. So I like how it captures Flash and immediately heads to Osborn's factory. There's a really fun fight scene there. And of course now Flash is in trouble because, his little stunt backfired on him. Eddie Brock is there. He's trying to get the scoop of the century with the unmasking of Spider-Man. And naturally, he makes a fool of himself and he embarrasses JJ because it's Flash Thompson. And Jameson doesn't believe that Spider-Man could, hardy har har, turn out to be some goofy kid. And so Brock is, of course, canned by the end of the episode. And then you've got Fisk. He sends his men in because he wants Spider-Man deleted. Can't use the other word on YouTube. Actually, the K word is actually used quite a bit in Spider-Man. So there's that. You've got Spencer. He stays behind as everyone else leaves the factory there. You've got the acid being the Black Widow's weakness. So Spider-Man is able to dump that into the acid by using his webbing to gum up the thing's propulsion systems. Spencer is bound and determined that he's going to stay behind because he really wants Alistair to have the hover chair, but the lab explodes. Spoiler alert, Spencer's fine. Spencer is just fine. When I watched the show for the first time, though, I thought that was it for him. I was not aware of the interesting plot twist that was going to be revealed a few seasons later in the Sins of the Father story arc. So you've got Brock fired. Peter is called a coward by Felicia. She's mad at Flash too, so Peter's not doing too hot there. I like how Mary Jane is mentioned in this episode, and Peter's happy that he's kind of put the blind date aside, and Aunt May got to have some fun at the charity ball, and everything it kind of ends on a high note. Alistair, though, he is without a father, and you have the Kingpin making a good use of a bad outcome. He's able to procure one of the greatest minds, one of the greatest robotics experts, and he introduces himself and offers Smythe a quote unquote job. And I love how the episode ends. Smythe is duped into working for this guy. Kingpin blames Spider-Man for Alistair's disappearance, so he's made himself an ally, and he's got someone else hating Spider-Man. And the episode kind of ends on a cliffhanger. I didn't realize the next episode was going to start on a recap until I saw it that following Saturday. I really love everything the episode would set up. I didn't know that Norman was going to turn out to be a goblin or anything as the show started. I had no idea who Hobgoblin was at this point. I just knew that I liked all of the shady dudes behind the scenes pulling the strings. I liked Kingpin right away. I wanted to see what was going to happen to Osborn and Oscorp, because now, Kingpin's apparently got Oscorp in his clutches, so he's got more to utilize there. He's got Osborn working for him. Kingpin kind of came away winning the day, even though he didn't get Spider-Man, deleted. 10 out of 10 for this episode, though. Cannot wait to get into Return of the Spider Slayer, or Spider Slayers, in the next video. These are two fantastic episodes. I'm going to talk about the toyetic qualities of the Spider Slayers in the next video as well. Fantastic robots. Till then, guys, take it easy.
Updated.